Welcome to part 2 of the update 7.2 refines. If you missed part 1, we already covered Sigrun, Norn, Nir's Lead, and Valentin Captria. In part 2, we're reviewing Mythic, Peony, and Thrasir with their remixes, and Dimitri has his own refine. Let's just jump right in. Peony is our free book 4 hero, so everyone has her. As a flying dancer, she is a solid support unit for many situations, and Peony has a unique dance which got remix buffed. Gentle Dream Plus largely works the same, grants another action to ally, and grants +4 field buffs to every stat, plus a status that lets the ally warp to adjacent spaces next to an ally within 2 spaces. Gentle Dream also grants a status that neutralizes stat penalties on the unit, and as a reminder, Peony spreads all of these effects to the target ally and any other allies in cardinal directions of Peony and that dance target. Essentially, Peony can grant your whole team warping, field buffs, and now neutralize their stat penalties. I believe this is the first time neutralizing stat penalties is a status effect, and this means it works on the enemy phase if the foe's debuff skills reapply. Since you get rid of debuffs in combat, do keep in mind unity effects will not work, so you need to be careful of that. If this messes up your strategy, honestly, you could just run the base Gentle Dream. Now let's talk about Peony's refine for Flower of Joy. This weapon did get an upgrade. 14 Might Tome that grants +3 res and grants +4 attack and speed to allies in cardinal directions during their combat. If Peony has an ally in a cardinal direction, when she fights, she gets +4 to all stats. So, Flower of Joy's cross spur effects are now +4 instead of +3. With Gentle Dream Plus, you can get +8 attack and speed when combined with the field buffs. If you want Peony to fight, she gets an okay +4 stats for herself. Now for the refine, if Peony is above 25% health, she gets another +4 stats and makes a guaranteed follow-up attack. After combat, Peony heals 7 HP for herself and allies in cardinal directions. This is our second dancer refine, right? Once again, instead of actually doubling down on support capabilities, devs have given Peony extra combat power, +8 to all stats and a free follow-up attack. Peony can then heal after combat plus technically heal her team, but I don't think that is going to be a very common strategy. Dancers are hit by base stat total penalties, and ranged dancers lose even more stats, so +8 will help, but don't expect Peony to be taking out tons of foes. Funny enough, she has some speed but got a free follow-up attack anyway. This can help her double into follow-up denial, but again, I would not exactly recommend fighting with Peony unless you are desperate. You also probably need more combative skills to actually take out targets, and not everyone is going to give Peony damage perks that an actual combat unit would like. If you don't plan to have Peony fight, then she got a relatively minor buff to her support power. Slightly better buffing while the neutralizing stat penalty status is actually pretty good. Keep in mind, Peony does not get this status herself. For the most part, dancers are here to dance, and Peony can further buff her teammates now. You can try to fight with her, but without actual combat skills, don't expect much. With the remix, Peony gets cross spur res for free. Technically, Fortify res is a bigger buff, but it doesn't stack with Gentle Dream, so cross spur res is better overall. +9 res if you can line up your team. You could try to use another buffing Sacred Seal like Distant or Close Guard. However, if you are close enough for those skills to activate, you may as well double dip with the C-slot versions. You will lose 1 resistance, but gain +4 defense for whichever enemy type. Technically, Reigns and Holds can also do the same thing, but Peony can benefit from them as well. You don't have the range of Cross Spur, but do you really need it for defensive buffs? If you're doing actual cross-map plays, I feel like Cross Spur Attack or Cross Spur Speed, whenever that releases, would be a better option. Now, to pair with the new neutralizing debuff status, you could use Infantry Speed Tactic to pass along no follow-up. No follow-up via statuses is becoming a popular way to get its effects. Peony could help pass it around even if it does overlap with her own field buffs. Now, for B skills, aerobatics and any fly mobility skill is fine. Peony likes to warp around her team to get into dancing position. You can then move these skills into the Sacred Seal slot, and Wings of Mercy is an ever potent option. Another strong choice is Far Trace for Kanto. Peony doesn't have a lot of movement like Raisin or the cavalry dancers, but it would still be helpful to get out of the way. Technically, you could dance, Kanto, and then have an ally warp to Peony's new position, but it would be tough to use this offensively. Last, let's discuss what common skill options Peony has if you want to utilize her new refine. Remote Sparrow seems good because we'll take any damage reduction we can get. Guard Fur also has built-in DR, and you could stack it up, but I would not really suggest that unless your Peony is absurdly invested. To counter quick repulse skills, you could use 30 Impact. With the refine, Peony gets +18 extra defense, which is better than nothing, but again, I wouldn't really rely on it all that much. Maybe going for the new Remote Mirror may work at least against a mage. For what it's worth, last month's Ifingr could get you Swift Sparrow 3 and Speed and Res Rain 3. I mean, if you want to give it to Peony, I won't stop you. If she can attack safely, then yeah, you get a free follow-up attack with a decent stat boost, so Peony can at least do something. Overall, it's pretty clear the devs do not want to push these dancers refines into super hard more support skills. Peony gets some upgrades, but it's mainly the neutralized stat penalty status that is the most new impactful addition. I think that's fine, and we do have 3 more Mythic dancers coming, so I guess we'll see if this holds up. If you really don't need Peony to fight at all, just grab Gentle Dream Plus using SP. Next Mythic remix is for Thrasir, and this one does pack quite a punch. Let's start with her Ifingr Tome, which got an upgrade to its base effect. It's still effective against dragons, and if Thrasir is within 3 spaces of an ally, she gets +6 to all stats now, and she's going to get the full no follow-up 3 effects. After combat, she still inflicts -4 debuffs on the nearest ally. Essentially, Thrasir gains offense and no follow-up and an extra +2 to her stat boosting effect. Great stuff, and it lets her double reliably if she outspeeds. For the Refine, it grants accelerated specials. At start of combat, if Thrasir is above 25% HP, she gets another +4 stats and neutralizes foe speed and res field buffs. Simple, but good additions. Slaying is always appreciated and just makes Thrasir a more flexible unit when it comes to specials. In total, her stat bonus is now +10 to everything, and she ignores speed and res buffs. As for the remix of her B skill, Killing Intent, at start of turn, inflict exposure on nearest foes within 5 spaces and foes within 2 spaces of that foe through the next actions. The rest is basically the base version of the skill. If hurt or the foe has a penalty active, inflict -5 speed and res and gain desperation. Exposure is a status that grants +10 damage on hit, so it's an excellent addition for a defense team. With 5 range, Thrasir can apply exposure to whoever steps close to her team, and since it's a penalty, it will also proc the -5 speed and res and desperation part of Killing Intent. This just means Thrasir is now self-sufficient, but of course, more deals don't hurt to have. Altogether, this is a solid remix and refine, +10 to all stats, a better low speed and res effect, desperation, and exposure adds 10 more damage per hit. Thrasir has offense and a follow-up to consistently trigger desperation, and this is a ton of damage she gets to use in 2 consecutive hits. Exposure also just helps every other ally out there, so it's a fantastic tool in general. If you want to use Harmonic Catre or Harmonic Cordelia, then their triangle attack and dual strike brave attacks becomes super scary. Thrasir herself could instantly quad with those abilities. The only downside is that Thrasir debuffs her own allies, but if you have units that run unity effects or can get rid of debuffs, then you can counteract those. Also, don't forget, she is effective against dragons. Not the most complicated remix buff, but just a good amount of solid additions. For playstyles, Thrasir is mostly the same, but can proc Killing Intent via exposure now. With accelerated specials, she can technically proc Ruptured Sky in 2 hits, but only if there is no guard in the enemy. Ruptured Sky is a great pick to double up on dragon killing. As part of the remix, she gets attack and speed ideal 4, and you could further boost stats with attack and speed oath 4. Oath 4's warping is fantastic for a defense mage. In general, Thrasir just added more killing power, and exposure support for a team is never bad. If you want to get a little more complicated, you can play around with special choices and cooldown reduction. If you run Times Pulse, Thrasir can now instantly charge Ruptured Sky or Moonbow. This will get around guard, but she has no DR piercing effects, which is a bit unfortunate. You may also want to proc the special on hit number 2 to get around one-time DR effects. Since Thrasir has desperation, you could maybe run Flashing Blade instead to counteract guard, and you'll end up using the special on hit number 2. Flashing Blade also just opens up higher cooldown specials like Luna, Astra, or Dragon Fang. If you go the instant special route, attack and speed finish 4 will grant higher damage since you get the 5 extra true damage on 2 hits. The healing isn't as important since Thrasir ideally should be hitting twice in a row to get the kill. Now, while Thrasir is supposed to double dip off exposure, you technically could triple dip if you use an area effect special. If you have an Infantry Pulse type setup, Thrasir's AoE special proc will also get the 10 damage via exposure. She then attacks twice in a row in combat for 3 hits in a row, and essentially that's 30 true damage just from exposure. In general, Thrasir is a very scary mage assuming she doubles. She still has Flashing Blade 4 if you would prefer to use a Sacred Seal like Blade Session. You can also use Remote Sparrow for DR, but she's supposed to kill in 2 hits, so maybe not as necessary. For the C slot, you could run a Menace skill, but Panic Smoke 4 or Speed Smoke 4 could also cause chaos for the enemy phase. For other Sacred Seals, Bonus Delver could be fun in a buffing team, and Life and Death can be used if you do go the AoE route. For the most part, just adding more attack and speed and bring more devils to stack on exposure. Even if Thrasir herself isn't the best killing machine, exposure can at least help any and all allies. It's a really nice stat to bring along with a huge range. I would say good remix and solid refine. If a DR piercing mage special does happen, Thrasir is in at least a better spot to utilize it as well. Last up for today is the original Dimitri, who is a Lance Cavalier. Like another blonde-haired prince, Dimitri does not focus on res at all, instead having a focus on attack and defense with a little bit of speed. He did not get a super buster refine or anything, but he did get something unique, and I would say this is a good trend if you're looking forward to Edelgard and Bonnet's refines. Noble Lance got some good changes. It still has 16 might and grants plus 3 attack. At start of combat, if Dimitri is hurt or the foe has more than 75% HP, he gets plus for all stats and a free follow-up attack. Noble Lance used to work only if Dimitri and the foe were both at full health or if both of them were hurt. It's not so honorable anymore. It can simply proc at any point into a full HP foe or anytime Dimitri is not at full HP. For the refine, if Dimitri initiates combat or the foe is more than 75%, he gets another plus 4 stats and deals true damage equal to 10% of his attack stat while reducing damage by the same amount. Dimitri then has all percent damage reduction skills. I'm quite impressed with what they've been doing with the house leader refines, but it does kind of make sense considering their brave ults cut in line. For Dimitri, he's going to get attack scaling, true damage, and flat damage reduction. Being able to cut DR skills in half is also extremely nice considering units like Alir are stacking multiple dodge effects. It doesn't affect defensive specials, but not a lot of things do. Keep in mind, because the scaling on the true damage and flat DR is 10% of attack, you really only need to push for increments of 10. At 70 attack, Dimitri gets plus 7 true damage and reduces all hits by 7 as well. You then need to hit 80 attack for this to go up by 1 point. It's a solid perk, but you don't have to pour every extra stat into attack only. Generally speaking, Dimitri is still an aggressive Lance Cavalier who kind of relies on free follow-up attacks. He will be stopped by a no follow-up, but with DR halving, the man will hurt a ton if squishy units are not careful. I would say Dimitri will be quite interesting into slower, bulkier foes with DR. He will still be able to double them, and cutting things like Dragon Wall in half could net Dimitri the kill. For the most part, builds are still the same for a general aggressive Cavalier. I wouldn't really bother stacking more res. I think the plus 8 res and flat DR are good enough to take one hit. For more damage, attack and defense catch or clash 4 are always good options. Obviously, Kanto near trace continues to be good, and flow near trace works just like it does for Alfred. It's mostly to check if foes bring defense in the follow-up. For C skills, attack and defense menace meet the same attack range of Cavaliers, and it's more damage on the table. With a soft counter to damage reduction, you really just want Dimitri to double. He isn't the slowest unit out there with an extra speed, so if you did want to try speed stacking, it could work. That type of build mainly serves to challenge middling speed units, since you won't actually catch up to pure speedsters. Those guys still need to be careful though, since squishy units who only rely on dodge could still fall or just take really heavy damage now. For pure damage output, Dimitri has low attack and defense, which is fine. Still defense 4 could be used and isn't bad with attack and defense menace. If you want a more mixed phase build or something to fight multiple times, then guard 4 is interesting. It gives one time 30% DR, and like Brave Dimitri, we can stack percent DR with flat DR. It's not as good obviously and only works once, but it could make Dimitri a bit more annoying, and you can run other skills like attack smoke 4 to take some hits on the enemy phase. I could mainly see this being solid into dragons. Dimitri would like any extra magical bulk, and guard itself can prevent a special proc. Speaking of specials, you could also use Sturdy Surge and Heavy Blade to heal off of Dimitri's own special procs. Arcane Qiang has a lot more cooldown reduction perks, but even a smaller special with Dimitri's partial DR piercing could be enough. On a base level, this Dimitri does bring some extra firepower and could be annoying for slower units. Defensive specials are still an issue, but if Dimitri can double, he cuts any other DR effects in half. He gets some bonus true damage and flat DR, but unless you run something like Guard 4 to get percent DR, do not expect another Brave Dimitri. For the simplest setup, take your attack and defense boosting skills, use near trace or lows on the B slot, and then run the Guard Sacred Seal to prevent specials. Hopefully Dimitri's 2 hits can then finish the job. I don't expect to see OG Dimitri outshine his other ults, but this is a neat refine, and it does provide some unique perks the Arcane Qiang just won't have. That will finally wrap up the refines for update 7.2. As a reminder, if you want to summon Peony or Thrasir, there are now going to be 2 separate remix banners. One has Peony and 7 other units. The second has Thrasir and another 7 units. Do not pick the wrong banner when you're summoning. That'll be it for now. Check out part 1 if you missed it. Next up, we are covering the full Valentine's banner. We have a couple fun things to talk about. Thank you for watching, and see you then.